This is Thursday morning. I'm glad to be with you today, and I hope today is a good day for you. Have you ever gotten up in the morning and for some reason it just seemed like there was something wrong? You weren't real sure. You ever had that happen? I think all of us have. Well, this morning I got up early as I do every morning, and I got up early, and then Frances came in and she said this to me. She said, "Do you know anything about thunderstorms today?" I said, "No, I don't think there's thunderstorms today." She said, "I looked on my phone and it gave me a warning for thunderstorms." Well, there are a lot of people that are getting false reports of things. And then they are worried about those things. Well, it took us about 2 minutes or 2 seconds, I should say, to figure out that warning that came on was a leftover warning and had nothing to do with today, for which I am thankful, by the way. Beautiful day. And the sun is shining. The high today will be somewhere around 60 or whatever, not the thunderstorms and tornado warnings and high winds and all that seem to have been predicted. Did you know there are many times in life where if we listen to the voices around us, we might get a little discouraged thinking about those things? But I like what one man said. He was sitting on a curb one day or on a bench by the curb, and a man walked by, and this guy just looked so relaxed. And a man said to him, he said, "Sir," he said, "you sure look relaxed." He said, "Yes, sir, I am." He said, "You look like you don't have a worry in the world." He said, "Well, I'm not worried." And he said, "But don't you realize the trouble in the world? Don't you realize the conflicts in the Middle East? Don't you realize that in our own country, the country seems to be divided and everybody's fighting and all this?" And he said, "Aren't you aware of those things?" The guy said, "Yeah." He said, "You're not worried?" He said, "No." He said, "Why not?" He said, "Well, I'll tell you the truth." He said, "I read the end of the book and I know we win." Well, I think that's about the size of it for a Christian. When we know what God has promised and know what God is going to do, we can rest easy trusting Him. Today, we're going to continue talking about people God uses. And I hope you'll stay with us because this week it's a little bit different. And I think you'll find it to be a little different. And so I hope you'll stay with us. In my years of ministry, I have many times called on people that just sort of dropped out of church, can't find them. And you go see them, and oh, everybody's got an excuse. Well, my feelings got hurt. So and so did this, and it hurt me, or you didn't recognize me. I didn't get the honor I thought I should have get. I wasn't elected to be a deacon, and I know I'm as much qualified as so and so is being a deacon. There's all kinds of reasons. I'm just not happy anymore. Blah, blah, blah. On and on it goes. Well, some are legitimate and some are a little ridiculous, to tell you the truth. I heard about one family went to church. In fact, the true story, not made up. It was in Chattanooga, Tennessee, many years ago at Highland Park Baptist Church. And a family came in visiting. They didn't know where anybody sat. They got up in the balcony because the crowd was already starting to get in there, and they sat in a certain place. And this woman came in who had been in the church for years, but she always sat in the same place in the balcony where this family had sat. And so they came in, and she saw them sitting there, and boy, she got mad. I mean, got furious because somebody was sitting in her place. When the service was over, Dr. Robertson saw her in the alleyway behind the building. It's where buildings came together. You'd have to know the setup of the buildings there to understand what I'm telling you. But it was kind of a walkway to parking areas and all this. And Dr. Robertson was heading to his car. And this woman met him out there, and she said, "Dr. Robertson?" He said, "Yes, ma'am," and called her name. He knew her. She said, "I want you to know I am not coming back to this church." And he said, well, why? He said, what in the world happened? She said, well, I came in today. She said, I've been coming here for years. And every service, I sit in the same place up in that balcony. She said, you know where I sit. He said, yes, ma'am. She said, I came in today and there were people sitting in my seat. And I'm not coming back until you can guarantee me there will be nobody in my seat. It'll be saved for me. He looked at her and he said, Miss So and so, you know we can't do that. He said, but I want you to know something. He said, you got a bigger problem. He said, your problem is not somebody sat in the seat you usually sit in. He said, your problem is you need to die to self. He said, if you died to self, it wouldn't matter to you where you sat. Boy, she got mad and she huffed off. About a week later, she came back. She was waiting out there in that alleyway again when Dr. Robertson came out. She said, Dr. Robertson. He said, yes, ma'am. She said with tears in her eyes, she said, when I left here, I was really mad. She said, but when you told me my problem was I needed to die to self, she said, it made me even more mad. She said, but I want you to know, you were right. She said, it won't matter to me where I sit. And Dr. Robertson said for years, up until the woman passed away, just about, he said every service, she was there, sitting in different places, just smiling all over herself. Well, I've heard a lot of those excuses too. However, I heard about these two men who went fishing on Sunday. They're sitting out there in that boat with their lines in the water, and one of them said to the other, he said, he said, I really feel guilty being out here fishing like this on Sunday. He said, boy, it's just really bothering me. And he said to his friend, he said, how about you? His friend said, no, said, no. He said, I wouldn't have gone to church anyway. Guy said, what do you mean you wouldn't have gone to church anyway? He said, oh, I couldn't. He said, my wife's sick in bed with the flu. Well, that's about the way it goes sometimes, isn't it? Our text today is found in Hebrews chapter 11. And I want you to think with me today because we have been talking about people God uses. And I want you to think about unnamed, unknown people. The people who really are the greatest are the ones who are unknown. And I want to point something out to you. In Hebrews 11, we have what is called the roll call of faith or the hall of faith. Call it whatever you want to. But everybody in there is known because they had faith in God. Enoch had faith and he was translated. Abel had faith and he made the right offering. You go down the list. Abraham had faith. He left Ur of the Chaldees and God used him to form the nation of the Hebrews. David had faith. He killed the giant. Noah had faith, built an ark. Moses had faith. He led the people out of Egypt. On and on it goes. But in verse number 31, we find this beginning and going through verse number 38. By faith, the harlot Rahab perished not with them that believed not when she had received the spies. And what shall I say more? For the time would fail me to tell of Gideon and of Barak and of Samson and Jephthah, of David also, of Samuel and of the prophets, who through faith subdued kingdoms, wrought righteousness, obtained promises, stopped the mouths of lions, quenched the violence of fire, escaped the edge of the sword, out of weakness were made strong, waxed valiant in fight, turned to flight the armies of the aliens. Boy, did you get what he said? I mean, I look at that and I think about the story of Gideon. He said, man, these guys by faith, look what they did. They turned to flight the army of the aliens. You remember the story of Gideon? The Midianites were coming down to attack Israel. And the Lord said, Gideon, I want you. Gideon said, who, me? Not me. He said, I'm scared to death. I'm over here on the backside, threshing wheat back here, hiding from the enemy. The Lord said, no, I want you. And Gideon, with his 300, without lifting a sword, but by breaking a pitcher, letting a lamp shine, and blowing a trumpet, set to flight the thousands of the Midianites. Boy, what a story. That Gideon. Well, now I want you to listen to what he said. He said, they quenched the violence of fire. They escaped the edge of the sword. Out of weakness they were made strong. That's Samson. They waxed valiant in fight, David. Turned to flight the armies of the aliens, Gideon. And then listen to this. Women received their dead raised to life again. You remember the Shunammite woman? And others, and others, they didn't turn to flight the aliens. They didn't win the victory by the sword. They did not receive their dead raised to life again. But I want you to listen. And others were tortured, not accepting deliverance, that they might obtain a better resurrection. And others, the second others, had trial of cruel mockings and scourgings, yea, moreover, of bonds and imprisonment. They were stoned, they were sawn asunder, they were tempted, they were slain with the sword. They wandered about in sheepskins and goatskins, being destitute, afflicted, and tormented. That doesn't sound like the victorious group, does it? And then it says this, of whom the world was not worthy. They wandered in deserts and in mountains and in dens and caves of the earth. But I want you to notice these two others. Others, he says, were tortured, and they refused to accept deliverance. And others had trial of cruel mockings and scourgings, and bonds and imprisonment. They were stoned. They were sawn asunder, cut in half. And he goes through all of this list, these others. All this week, we have been talking about the people that God uses. He uses busy people, willing people, available people, faithful people, spirit-filled people. But today, I want you to note a group that we do not mention often, and that is the other people. We relish the idea of Abraham leaving Ur of the Chaldees, heading off into a land he didn't even know where it was, but God would show it to him. What faith! We admire Noah for building an ark when he had never even seen rain. He had never seen a boat, but he built the ark, which is an amazing thing God gave him the will to do. And by faith, man, what a guy. We think about David, the hero who by faith walked down as a boy and killed Goliath, the giant, when that one giant held the entire army of Israel at bay. We think about Elijah facing the 400 prophets of Baal. What a guy. But we forget those who had faith, but they were not victorious. Their faith was not in the victory God was going to give them. Their faith was in what was coming. This world is not my home. I'm just passing through. My treasures are laid up somewhere beyond the blue. These unknown others, The Bible says the world wasn't worthy of them. They were far more valuable than the world could ever imagine. In our text, we're given them. They endured torturing. They endured the fire. They endured the mockings, the scourgings, having to go out and be exiled. In one place, he says this: they wandered in deserts and in mountains, in dens and caves of the earth. They had to use sheepskins and goat skins because they were destitute, afflicted, and tormented. Think about those people. I don't think the prosperity preachers of today would list those people on their brochure of success. No, but I want you to know God put them in the Hall of Fame, of whom the world was not worthy. One of the most revered and honored places in America, sacred places in America, is the tomb of the unknown soldier. I want to let that just sink in for a second. Unknown soldier. When I was a boy, there were heroes we had of those who had fought in different things. I remember as a boy thinking about those men in the Revolutionary War. George Washington was a hero. Patrick Henry was a hero. Paul Revere was a hero, riding out. The British are coming. The British are coming. All of those, they were heroes. I can remember thinking about Alvin York in World War One. Boy, the hero. Heroes. Those guys, they did something, but we know their names. But in the Tomb of the Unknown, which was actually started in 1921, it was fixed there in honor a brave unknown soldier of World War One. He died in the battle. His name is not known. So they put that place up there to memorialize not just that one, but those that we don't know who they are. It was added to in 1958 and then again in 1984. One of the tragedies of war is that often there are those who remain unknown. They gave all, but nobody knows them. Nobody knows their names. Dog tags gone, identification gone. They don't know them. In the Bible, we are not told of some important unknown others. The ones who carried Joseph's bones for 40 years in the wilderness after they left Egypt and carried them through every battle, every fought battle going into the promised land until the victory was won. And then they buried Joseph's bones in the promised land. Think about that. Unknown. Who carried those bones? I heard a great preacher of the past, Junior Hill, preach a message one time on the ministry of carrying bones. Boy, let me tell you something. God uses unknown people. I don't know who they were. We think about the story of Paul and we revere the apostle Paul, but we talk about that story of when they had to let him down in a basket over the wall to keep him from being killed. And we talk about Paul, he had to escape. My question is, who let him down over the wall? Those are some others. Do you realize that those men who let Paul down in that basket were in danger as much as Paul was if they had been found out? They'd kill them. I'll give you another one that is a unknown. We don't know who it was. What's the Philippian jailer's name? I don't know. But he took the apostles out. He washed their wounds. He fed them. Others. Others. We don't know all of those. But I want to tell you this. Every one of the others are known to God. The Lord said that He is faithful to reward. He remembers the labor of love. He keeps the records. These unknowns are those who suffer without fanfare. They struggle without stumbling, and they reach victory only when they get to glory and in the grace that God gives them during that time. These are true heroes of the faith. I wonder how many people in the realm of Christianity today are willing to just be one of the others. Just others. Our name's not known. I believe there are a lot of others who are serving God in some remote place. Nobody knows them. They'll never receive an honorary doctorate. They'll never be lifted up in somebody's school. They'll never be recognized, but in heaven, God knows them. I believe there are Christian people that have suffered without ever knowing God's healing touch on their life in this world. Like Fanny Crosby, who was blind for her whole life, but she turned that sorrow into a blessing for others. She was an other. Others. I want to be just one of the others. If nobody knows me, it's okay. God knows me. It is better to be in God's Hall of Fame than to have all the accolades this world can give. Are you willing just to be an other? I think every one of us need to realize God is looking for some others. I want to be one of those. God bless you for listening today. I hope you'll join with us again in the morning at 8:30 right here. And I trust you have a great day. That's my prayer for you today.